I doubt it, only that Woody obviously got a sort of 20-odd minutes or whatever and came through that okay. Dale Stevens got a few minutes as well and seemingly come through that okay. They were both on the grass today, so I'm expecting them to be available. The other lads, I think with the three in the week, it's a tough call for us. You know, they're close, especially Johan and Robbie. So we're going to have to see, but it is tight now. We just keep losing players constantly. So, you know, we're probably going to have to make a call on them and see if the right side of it and maybe leave them. So it's a tough call, but we might have to do that.
Is it a double-edged sword that the next game comes around so quickly then, in the sense that, in one sense, you know, like you say, the players are stretched and some are struggling, but at the same time, it's an opportunity to try and get rid of that thoughts or negative thoughts about that defeat to Spurs at the weekend?
No, that goes pretty quick. You know, we're well versed in playing them games, you know, and I said straight after the game, if they turn up and you don't, you get beat against the really top clubs. It's simple as that in my experience. And that's exactly what happened. They turned up, were clinical in the right times, and we weren't. Gave away too many soft goals. So that has to get parked quickly. We've been down them results before, so I'm not too worried about that side of things. The injury side I'm still worried about, because we just can't get everyone fit, and that's been a real challenge to us. And obviously we're coming up against the Leicester side, who are having their fair share at the moment as well. And, you know, we've had it for a long period now, and that's been, you know, it's been a big challenge coming through that period, but we have come through it, still got wins, still got good points on the board, relatively speaking, with the challenge we've had. So we certainly look for the group's mentality to stay strong through this period, regardless of the odd hit that we take during the season, which we often have to.
One nice little bright spark from the weekend, though, was Lewis Richardson getting his debut and coming on as an 18-year-old, Burnley's youngest ever player. I mean, a great little fillip for him and nice for some of the players around him, I guess.
Well, I think within this period, I've mentioned many times, you know, I've never been one really to try and use that situation to sort of suggest that we haven't got any players. We have got players, they're often young players, and Rico's been doing nicely for the young players with Steve Stone and that group. He's had his ups and downs, but lately he's really applied himself well, and Stoney spoke very highly of him. He's been with the first team on and off for a number of months, really. And I think it was appropriate. You know, the game had got away from us, but why not give him a taste of what his future might be if he continues to apply himself and affect games.
As you mentioned, Leicester, they might be suffering a bit as well. I mean, Harvey Barnes having gone off at the weekend, it looks like he's going to have to have surgery. So that's a blow for them. We don't know whether Vardy's going to play. There seems to be a lot of clubs similar to yourselves that are really starting to struggle, particularly at this time of the season now after such a hectic schedule.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all trying to be balanced about it. We're all trying to recognise the bigger picture of football and the challenge there are. I think it's just a bit of a challenge when, for example, we've had so many games, we've had so many injuries, it's not really been accounted for. And then when the international break comes around, it looks like we're going to have 3 weeks break. So, you know, you'd think there was a better way of maybe mixing the games up. But alongside that, as I've made clear many times, everyone's trying to do the right thing. Everyone's trying to work as hard as they can through this strange season and strange events in the world. So I think we just get on with it regardless of the challenge. It's not ideal. It's not ideal for the players. It's just one of them ironic twists of the programme we have to go through when the world's talking about health and safety, and yet we're asking more and more and more of the players. So there is no balance to that. But the challenge is quite obvious, fitting all the games into a game schedule that we all knew was going to be a very, very busy season. So we get on with it.
And as for Leicester, Brendan Rodgers seems to be putting together a good side there, a side that looked like they could be top 4 challengers on a fairly regular basis, the way things are going for them.
You know, I think to be fair to Brendan, I think he recognised it when he went in there. I think they were kind of piecing together a side anyway before that under the previous couple of managers, and then Brendan's added his feel to it, and I think he's done a great job. You know, he's kind of brought a couple in who he thought had shown signs, and I think he's manipulated the side into the way he wants it to play. And as I said, done a great job there so far. I mean, they fell away at the end last season, but they've done a really good season, and now it's whether they can take that on this season and stay in that top 4. But I recognise the work he's done and they've done as a collective, because I think they're a really good outfit. You know, they can play, they can press, they can defend as well, and even with the challenge they've had more recently with injuries, they've still applied themselves to get good results. Obviously, a tougher week last week with Europe and then Arsenal and losing players. But generally speaking, over a season, I think they'll be very, very pleased with the way things are going, and I think Brendan will be and should be, rightly so.
And over the weekend, a couple of big talking points. Our old friend handball seems to be back in the news again. Is there still too much confusion and chaos around what constitutes a handball as far as you're concerned?
Yeah, I think it's tough. We had one against West Brom, might have got us out of jail in an ugly performance, but it kind of, I think it did touch the lad's thigh, hit him on the arm. I didn't want to cry it in too much, but you've seen them given. I think it's really difficult, that handball thing. A lot of the rules, I think over the last few years, the powers that be of why they keep messing around with the rules is beyond some of us, because the game's got more and more complicated. Of course, the game does get more complicated in many ways and more detailed. But if you keep adding on more of these, like the minutiae and the forensic kind of feel of football, it's getting to a place when referees, it's hard to make these decisions on the moment. Then you get VAR, and it's seemingly something I believe in, but seems to be not quite aligned or streamlined in the way that the referees are seeing things. And yet again, going too forensic, where they can't sort of, or seemingly can't disassociate themselves with the screen for a minute and just to remind themselves they're referees and what they would see and what they'd normally see. And, especially handball, and especially with people going down in the box, the tiniest touch that would never make you fall over in the rest of the pitch suddenly is a penalty and things like this. So I think I do believe in VAR. I believe it can be used properly, and I think it will get better. The handball situation is just tough. I think we're all scratching our heads what gets given and what doesn't get given on a weekly basis sometimes.
With that in mind, then, do you think we should have some sort of opportunity to at least hear from referees to sometimes find out what their thinking process is behind some of the decisions that they're making?
No, not necessarily. I think, again, I think the referees, I always say the three hardest jobs for me on any given game day, the two managers and the referee, all under scrutiny for different reasons. I don't think it's relevant at the moment. They should hear, what they're saying or what they're thinking. I think that should be a private moment between the referee and the VAR, let's say, if they walk over to the screen or whatever. No, I think it's right that it gets looked at, refereeing, the same as football management, players, etc., etc. I just wonder whether sometimes they've got to slow it down. Not the referees, by the way, the powers that be, when they keep fiddling with the rules. I think sometimes you've got to just slow it down and, give the game a chance to breathe and let everyone get. It seems like every time we just get somewhere, they add another twist on a rule or another, tiny word into a rule, and it just seems to, make it even more or even harder to differentiate what is and what's not. I mean, the offside one now is crazy. It plays on, and you're going to get someone injured. It plays on that far now, and then the flag goes up, and everyone in the stadium, well, not now, but all the management, the staff, everyone can see that it's clearly offside, and both managers look at each other and all agree. But the referee's got to do their job. That's what they're told to do. They're told to let it play, how long you let it play for, etc., before the flag goes up. There's all twists and turns of the rules when it sort of seems to have just got very bitty and a bit complicated for me. But that's not the brightest.
Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you, Fraser. Hi, Katie, PLP.
Hi, Sean. Good afternoon. Just going back to, obviously, great to have Chris and Dale back for those few minutes at the end of the last game. But two more games this week, and still the reality of the somewhat reduced picks for you. Do the boys still feel at the moment that they can be hungry to go out and hunt these goals, or is it a case of kind of protecting what you've got given the realities?
No, I think, look, we try, and go on the front foot. I thought some of our attacking play against Tottenham, for example, was actually half decent. The front third, the final moment was the bit, moment of truth is the final moment, the pass, the cross, the finish. We applied ourselves to that side of things, but you've got to get the balance. You've got to make sure you defend properly. I don't think we've ever gone into games not trying to score, I can assure you, not trying to be productive. Sometimes it's the opposition, sometimes you have a quiet day, the mixture of it. It's finding the right balance, and I think we're still searching for that somewhat. We found it at some times the other week at Palace. I thought we were excellent both ends of the pitch, and a bit quieter against West Brom for sure. And then obviously yesterday they were too strong for us, and that sometimes happens.
Obviously, you always, even after the Spurs result, seem so kind of to the point but positive about kind of how things have unfolded. Does that reflect down to your team? Do you think that they can easily put that to one side and progress in what's arguably quite a difficult next few match rounds?
But to be honest, it's not. We don't park it without thought, but it still needs to be parked. You've got to move on quickly. The Premier League, well, never more so than this schedule that we've had. So don't get me wrong, we don't just brush things under the carpet. We talk about it, we analyse it, we did some analysis today, we make sense of it. But the thinking has to go away quickly, you know, and we've got a real honesty to our group in the way they work. I've always been incredibly proud of how the players operate here and the honesty they operate with. So it certainly wasn't a lack of physicality yesterday. They were very good. We didn't do the jobs that we normally do, but they have a real clear awareness of what's needed. You know, most of our players have been around the Premier League for a little while now, certainly a couple of 3 seasons, and then some more so. So I think they know what's required. And they know that the feeling of the Premier League is that games can get away from you against anyone, by the way. And when they do, it's how you operate straight after that to get yourself prepared for the next one. So, you know, that'll be the key thing, just focusing on the next challenge, regardless of our own internal challenges with injuries, and, you know, sticking with that strong mentality to go and perform again. And that's what we'll look to do.
And talking of analysis, what did you make of Roy Keane's analysis that he could have played in your side? Will you be sending him an invite to training, do you think?
He probably could have. I don't know whether you remember, but he was pretty decent, to be fair. It wouldn't surprise me if he could have, to be fair to him. But no, look, I've never had a problem with people questioning us. What we do, it's part of their jobs. You know, they're pundits for a reason. They have a voice, they have a say. I've never been precious about that. Everyone's got an opinion on football, trust me, not just pundits, everyone. It's one of the strangest jobs, you know, where people actually tell you what you're doing wrong. I don't remember going to the doctors and telling him what he was doing wrong, or my lawyer, or my solicitors. But apparently, football managers, everyone thinks they can do better than us. So I'm used to that. It's just part of the territory. And I've certainly got no problem with Roy Keane or his views.
It's a good job we can only have 20 managers. Otherwise, I think there'd be a few thousand thinking they could do it.
A few million in our case, trust me. Every person I meet seriously tells me what I should be doing. I go, okay, I'll try and do that as well.
Looking ahead to Leicester, of course, Brendan admits that there is a lacking midfield for him, and there's a lot on Yuri Tillman's shoulders. Are there any gaps in the offensive that you think your boys can truly capitalise on tomorrow?
Well, the first thing we've got to do is get ourselves right. You know, it's not always looking. We have to look at the opposition, of course, and be aware of them. But we've got to get our own performances right. The last 2 have been off of what we normally do. Different reasons for that, but we've got to make sure we're on top of our own performance, not overthink the opposition. You know, but I think the growth in players, you know, from Brendan's point of view, if he's mentioning, you know, Tielemans, you know, you've got to remember he wasn't, you know, like 5,000 quid, you know, it was 36 million. So I think you would expect them players to grow. And I think Brendan likes them types of players, you know, the players who can grow. And I think there's a clutch of them there, actually. Unfortunately, they are missing a couple, especially Harvey Barnes, who's done terrific, and Maddison, who's done so well. You know, they're really good young players, and Tielemans is another one. So, you know, I think they're a good group who operate well, and I appreciate Brendan's challenges because we've had a lot ourselves. But like I say, it all comes down to, at the moment, we've got to keep focusing on what we're doing, get ourselves back to where we were just a very short time ago. We were excellent against Palace. We were at least solid against Fulham, and just come away from it the last couple of games. We do need our players to get fit, but equally, the players that are playing, we know they can operate at a better standard than they've done the last couple.
Perfect. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. Hi, Dan, Jewel, ready like a shirt?
Down. Looking a bit like Billy Connolly today, I feel. Like a young Billy Connolly.
I'll take young. Thank you.
No, I said you look like him. You're nowhere near as funny as him. Let me make that clear. Not even 1% as funny as him, in fact.
I wasn't expecting anything else.
It's a fair one.
I wasn't expecting anything remotely resembling you saying I was as funny as Billy, easy for me to say, Billy
Easy
Connolly.
to say, yeah. In fact, not many, let's face it, it's Billy Connolly. Not many as funny as Billy Connolly.
Exactly.
He's got to be in the top 5 of funny people, surely.
Who is your favourite funny man or woman?
Well, Billy over for how many years, got to be up there, that's for sure. You know, it's not just like a few years of doing it, like, I don't know, 40 years, 50 years, I don't know, but incredibly funny man. Unlike yourself, or myself for that matter.
I bet if somebody asked Billy Connolly who their favourite long-lived Premier League manager was, he'd say Sean Dyche.
I doubt it, but if you suggest, he certainly wouldn't say
Length of service.
We'll see. Anyway, we must get on and stop our gibberish, I'm sure. Yes,
indeed. It seems like a long time ago that you played Leicester at the start of the season at the King Power. It's actually not that long ago, is it? Because the schedule has been so hectic. Are you in a better position now than you were then? I looked at the substitutes bench. You had a lot of the young lads on there that day, and it was a bit of a crazy one with the 6 goals between you.
Well, I think that when you go in the starting 11, you know, with all due respect to Longy and Jimmy, I think started in that game at centre backs. You know, you're looking at Tarky and Ben Mee with their productivity as a pairing and individually for that matter. You know, there's just two. We were highly stretched then. We still are considerably stretched the way we want to be. But no, it was quite an open game. I remember that. It was one of them strange games. It could have ended 4-4. They had chances, obviously took them. We had chances, took a couple. You know, it was one of them. It was a bit of a ding-dong, really. But it was early season, as you rightly said. And although it sort of does feel a long time ago, it has come around quickly, equally. So it's that strange thing about life through this COVID period for most, actually. It seems a long drag, and yet soon enough, hopefully, we'll all be out of it. And it suddenly seems like it's gone like that. So, yeah, but back to the football, we take the next one gladly. You know, they're a good outfit. We know that. We need to respond to our own performance level, get it back where we were just a very short time ago, as mentioned, and then take it on.
If you managed to get to the levels that you were at recently, having had that tough start to the season for all the well-documented reasons, how easy is it to do it again now? You're kind of a bit thin on the ground numbers-wise. Your performances have gone off that little bit. Is it easy to get it back to what you're used to and what you're known for?
Well, I think the thing is, you know, sometimes I think you end up, it's a fine balance. You know when you're operating correctly, but equally, I said yesterday, you know, Tottenham were clinical, you know, and they did that to us last year when it just seemed like everything they hit goes in, you know, clinical finishes, clinical moments. And sometimes you've got to accept that, but you look at yourself as well, and we definitely could have done better, that's for sure. West Brom the same. You know, I don't want to discredit West Brom. They took the game on with 10 men. We didn't find a way. We didn't find a way of operating properly. On the other hand, the two previous games, we've been really good. So, you know, it comes, it's peaks and troughs. We're constantly a work in progress. I've never made out with the real deal or close to being the real deal. It would be helpful if we have players get fitter quicker. But we do like the group who are operating. They give us everything. They always max out. You know, certainly no lack of physical effort yesterday. We've got the stats today, so that's for sure. So the mentality and the physical side are there and intact. Just the details, and the details are vital in the Premier League. So I think tidying things up, bringing focus to ourselves, bringing focus, of course, to home performances as well. And then, you know, we start looking after ourselves again.
Would it be fair to say that both yourselves and Leicester, schedule-wise, with the workload, could do without this game in this midweek?
It was a strange one. I mean, we had a couple of cup games as well, but I think in the 13 games in 42 days, I think it was something like Leeds had 8 or 9 games and we had 13. I think it was only us and Man City who had 13. So, it's only that challenge when, you know, you go to the Premier League and say, well, we've got other weeks we could fit the games in, and they decide not to do that. Then it becomes a challenge, obviously, because you don't get the break in the middle of it. Leicester have had the Europa as well. So they've had their challenges, and now some injuries more recently. But we all get on with it. We all know the challenge. It's not like it's been thrust upon us out of the blue. You know, we knew where the game schedule was going to be loaded this year. So I think it's a fine line. Like I say, I'm not. I don't remotely want to be sounding like I'm picking fault or making excuses. I'm just merely suggesting these are the facts and the realities of the situation. But we're all in it. We're all in it to try and work hard. We're all in it to win games. We're all in it to work with the schedule the best we can. So we'll certainly, you know, the whistle will blow again very shortly against Leicester. We've got to be ready to perform. It's simple as that.
And just on fitness of players, when you were playing, how often were you 100% fit? And do you think the bar of what is an acceptable level of fitness or what is a risk you're prepared to take has changed from when you played to now?
Nothing's changed. I mean, as you get older and wiser, you learn about your body. You know the things you can get away with. You know the things that you're probably not going to get away with. Your thirst is always to play. Certainly my thirst, and I'm sure all of my players' thirst, is always to play, to get out there and play. The more challenging thing is when because players have got that feeling when they want to go out there and play, they want to, you know, be part of it. And sometimes it's just too soon, and that's the hardest one, when we have to make a sort of educated guess that if we risk them too early, they can get re-injured, and that's really difficult. Because most players, as soon as they're fit, more or less want to go back out there. And sometimes you have to say, look, we can't risk it. And we've been in that situation the last sort of month or so. We're looking at players going, we might have to give them one more game to try and not lose them for another 3, 4 or 5. And it's just been tough. And the other thing that's been tough with the schedule, obviously, if say you get 2, 3 injuries, well, we've had like Saturday, Tuesday, let's say. Obviously, it's been different days that, but you understand the train of thought. Well, in that 2 weeks, you could miss 5 games. Whereas if it's Saturday, let's say, you miss 3. So that, there's an obvious difference just by the scheduling and the timing of your injuries. That's the way it is, though. And like I say, I don't want to be crying it in. These are the challenges. It's simple. I say to players, this is the challenge. There's no backing down from it. This is the reality of what we're taking on. So we expect a lot of them, and I still do. So we expect to get out there on Wednesday night and perform against a good Leicester side and take it on and take on the game to go and look after ourselves and get what we can. And
so many games means you get to speak to us about every 10 seconds. You look
marvellous. Truly enlightening. Truly enlightening. I feel like a brand new person often when I finish these press conferences.
I'm sure you do. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dan.
Cheers, Dan.
Thank you. Hello, Ian Parker, Press Association.
Hi, Sean.
Hi, Peter.
You're generally speaking, you're a team that keep games tight. Even if you lose, it tends to be by the odd goal. Coming off a game like yesterday, do you have to say something different to the players when it's been a heavy scoreline?
No, not really. They know. We've got a good honesty about the group here. They know. They know the details. They know what they could have done better. They know where they were before the game and readiness for the game. We've had a look at the goals, obviously, and spoke through the goals and the awareness of what we usually do compared to what we didn't. And then you balance it up against, like I said, I was worried about the game before. You don't want, I said after the game, you don't open the can of worms with the media when you just build up into a game. But sides like that, the run they run, it very rarely lasts. They've got too many good players. They're going to turn up, and you just don't want it to turn up against you, and you've got to play well. Well, neither happened. We didn't play well, and they did turn up. And that's a bad mixture. Trust me, when you're playing sides as good as that.
And as you say, a very short turnaround. The players, the mood of the players going into a tough Leicester game and then an Arsenal game straight after that. Any concerns there, or do you expect them just to be able to put that to one side?
No, I expect them to park it. We have done many times before. Our players are well versed now in the Premier League. Well, most of them, not all of them. Obviously, there's a lot of young players on the bench and getting on. But the main 11, most of them know about the Premier League. They know that these challenges can occur. They've happened before. Where you get a game that gets miles away from you, and you've got to take on the next one. And sometimes you get a bad run. So that's part and parcel of the Premier League. There's not many sides, including Tottenham, by the way, who've just played. There's not many sides who don't have a clutch of games that go against them in the Premier League. If you look, apart from the ones who are market leaders who are running away, your Man Cities, and obviously last year your Liverpools, etc., there's not many sides in the Premier League that don't have a strange patch of games. And you never know when they're coming. You fight against it, you work against it, of course, you organise the team, you get them ready, you want them to perform. Suddenly a couple of games go against you, or one game, and that leads to another. Equally, though, when you get it right, it turns quickly in the Premier League, but you've got to work, you've got to make it happen. That's the biggest thing for me, I say all the time. You've got to make it happen, not wait for it to happen. And we've done that many, many times. And we'll look to do that again by really taking on the next challenge, no matter who it's against.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. And lastly, for this section, Alex James at Next Live.
Hi, Sean. Thanks, Pete.
Excuse me.
Sean, yesterday after the game, you mentioned Matt Lowton and how sort of impressed you were with him. I think last season he was in and out of the team a little bit, and obviously his contract was up. I know it's been extended now, but just sort of how impressed have you been with his character and his ability to come back from being out of the side to being in it, and perhaps one of the best performers in the last few weeks and months?
I think Lance and Bardo have kind of shared the shirt often, for different reasons, whether it be injury or maybe one's just slightly on top of the other with their form. But now signed a contract. They seem to, he seemed to be really pleased with that, wanting to stay here, enjoying his time here. And I think some players respond to that. He just looks settled again, and I think his performance has been very good. I think he's, we know he can play. Trust me, my only frustration with Lance is how good he can actually be. Sometimes I speak to him about just holding back a little bit rather than opening up and playing with that freedom, because he can play. Technically, he plays a very good passer of the ball. He deals with the ball very well. And his defender has improved enormously, I feel. And he's a good defender. He gets himself in good positions. And I thought he did so yesterday, cleaning up against a good Tottenham side and getting around the centre half when he needed to. But some of his delivery yesterday was excellent. Some of his weight of passing, his quality of passing was very, very good, which is why I mentioned it. I don't always mention individuals, but I think even in a game that gets away from you, you can still mention some of the positives. And I thought he certainly was one.
And you mentioned there he sort of shared the shirt a little bit over the past 2-3 seasons with Phil Bardsley. I guess that can only help, can't it, having two players at a pretty similar level competing for the same position in the side?
Well, we kind of, we want that competitive element. I speak about it often. We've only lost out for injuries. I did say we of course, recruitment's been tough for us, but when everyone's fit, I still think we've got a competitive group. Barlo's a top professional. He's lean, he's fit, he's hungry, but he's old enough and wise enough to have that respect that he's probably looking at Laos at the moment and going, yeah, he's delivering. So, I think when players are delivering in front of you, you have to bide your time. And I think we've got a healthy respect here for that kind of thinking. Players obviously knock my door and want to play. But sometimes they see it with their own eyes. And they just think, well, the player who's playing in my position is playing well. And therefore, I'm just going to have to wait my chance and be ready for when it comes.
Ideal world, do you sort of want to see Phil Bardsley sign on for next season as well? I realise it's sort of coming soon.
Yeah, it's an ongoing chance with these players and agents, the same as it was always, the same as I've answered to you and many others about 14,000 times in the last 8.5 years.
And just lastly from me, ALK and Alan Pace have been in sort of 2 months now since the takeover was completed. I just wondered how that relationship with yourself and the chairman has developed in that time, given you've been playing many matches and of course we're in the middle of a pandemic as well. Have you sort of had?
Yeah, they've had plenty on. The people that he's brought in with him and himself, they've had plenty on learning about the club the best they can. I've said all the time, it's difficult building the relationships you need to when it's through Zoom and that sort of thinking. I've had a couple of meetings with him and have another meeting going forward. Phone calls and messages. So yeah, slowly but surely we're getting to know each other just as people, and then of course the business side of it, and the club slowly but surely will be taking the shape that they want it to take. And then when it does that, then we'll talk more openly about what my part in that, the new shape is, if you like.
I guess that helps as well that you've got no transfer window now. I know you had January, of course, just after they came in, but if everything can sort of be discussed and thrashed out, if you like, before the summer window, then that puts you on an even keel for that window coming forward.
Yeah, we'll just wait and see. It's too early to worry about that at the moment. We do some background planning, of course, but that's certainly not the first concern for the new chairman and the people who are involved now. They've got to get their imprint on the club, remodel their thinking when it's appropriate, stick with some of the good stuff as well, of course. But in the backside of that, in the back burner, if you like, there's still Mike Rigg and the team there, making sure that we keep an eye on recruitment. Recruitment's been difficult because you can't, there's not many occasions you can actually physically get to go and watch players. People often talk about players coming in from Europe where you can't physically get there to watch players. So, that side of things tough at the moment, even just getting the background knowledge and increasing your knowledge on individuals. So, I still think there's a lot of work to be done. But I think in the bigger picture of the club, I think, Alan and all the new people involved, they're all getting a handle on it. They're all trying to point it in the right direction that they want it to. Behind the scenes, that is more like the offices, the way the club's ran, etc., etc. Not so much on my side of things because they, from what he's told me, they're happy with the way that we're operating and they're happy with the attempts and the drive and the desire for the team to perform and get results.